Gone are the days when every smartphone brand only used to compete with its rivals. We're living in a reality now where multiple companies from the same group are often competing with each other. Xiaomi has become one such company, as the Redmi Note 8 Pro and the Poco X2 are both priced very similarly and also share very similar specifications. So if you have to decide between these two phones, which one do you pick? Let's find out in our comparison. Now, before we go ahead, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and also hit that bell icon so you're the first to know whenever we have a new video. Let's first take a moment to look at the different variants and pricing of the Poco X2 and the Redmi Note 8 Pro. Now, both smartphones have very good build quality and they look pretty stylish. They both have similar weights and are also equally thick, although the Redmi Note 8 Pro is a tiny bit lighter. Now, both phones use LCD panels and HDR is supported too. The Poco X2 has a slight edge here as it supports a 120Hz refresh rate compared to the standard 60Hz refresh rate on the Redmi Note 8 Pro. Now, the Poco X2 also has a more modern looking display cutout thanks to the dual hole punch design compared to the wide notch on the Redmi Note 8 Pro. We found both displays to have very similar performance. Both of them get adequately bright with the same color profile set on both phones. They also handle HDR content very well too. Now, we did notice a slightly better contrast on the Redmi Note 8 Pro in some HDR clips, but this was only really noticeable when examining both displays side by side. The Redmi Note 8 Pro and the Poco X2 both have a single bottom-firing loudspeaker. Now, of the two, the Poco X2 speaker is noticeably louder as it has more detail and warmth. Vocals are crisp and even slight nuances in dialogues are clearly audible. Now, it's not like the Redmi Note 8 Pro speaker sounds tinny, it's just that it's not as loud or detailed as the Poco X2. The Poco X2 has a side-mounted fingerprint sensor which works well, but you have to press the power button for it to work, as a simple tap won't wake the screen. The Redmi Note 8 Pro has a rear-mounted fingerprint sensor which is also quick at authentication, and we found it easier to use. Now, you get a USB Type-C port, a speaker grill and a headphone socket at the bottom of both phones, and an IR emitter on the top. The Poco X2 has a hybrid dual SIM tray, which means you can either use two nano SIMs or a single SIM and a micro SD card. With the Redmi Note 8 Pro, you have the luxury of using two SIM cards and a micro SD card all at the same time. Now, it's impossible to pick a winner here in terms of design, as they're both extremely well built and they look pretty good. They're also both pretty heavy in the hand and they're not the easiest to use with one hand due to their large screens. The Redmi Note 8 Pro is powered by the MediaTek Helio G90T processor, which is a powerful gaming-oriented SoC. The Poco X2 uses Qualcomm Snapdragon 730G chipset. Now, both processors are more than capable of handling everyday tasks, and with normal usage, we didn't really notice any stutter or lag in the interface or even during multitasking on either phone. We tested the usual games such as PUBG Mobile and Asphalt 9 Legends on both of them, and these ran pretty well. The Redmi Note 8 Pro was able to run both games at high graphics quality, but after about 20 minutes of gameplay, we noticed that the phone got quite hot. The Poco X2 also got a bit warm after the same amount of time, but not as hot as the Redmi Note 8 Pro. Now, the battery capacities on both phones are identical at 4500 mAh, and we got similar runtimes from both phones in our HD video loop test. The Poco X2 ran for 13 hours and 43 minutes, while the Redmi Note 8 Pro ran for 14 hours. However, charging the Poco X2's battery is quicker thanks to the included 27-watt fast charger compared to the 18-watt bundle fast charger with the Redmi Note 8 Pro. Now, both the Poco X2 and the Redmi Note 8 Pro have 4 rear cameras, and the specifications are very similar as well. Let's see if we can pick a winner between the two. The Poco X2 features the newly announced 64-megapixel Sony IMX686 sensor, and you can see the rear camera specs on the screen now. The Redmi Note 8 Pro uses Samsung's GW1 imaging sensor with the same resolution, and here are the rest of the camera specs. Now, since both phones run on MIUI, the camera apps are pretty similar as well. Both smartphones support 4K video recording, slow motion video at 960 FPS, and the ability to shoot at the full 64-megapixel resolution. In daylight landscape shots, the primary sensors of both phones captured good details, but we prefer the white balance in photos taken by the Poco X2 as they more accurately capture the tones of our subject. The wide-angle camera manages to cram in a lot more of the scene into the frame, and here it was the Redmi Note 8 Pro that produced slightly better detail with lesser noise, even though the color tone wasn't entirely accurate. In close-ups of bright, colorful objects, both smartphones struggled with color saturation. The Redmi Note 8 Pro did a slightly better job, but the reds captured by both phones were wildly exaggerated. Switching to the dedicated macro cameras, it was the Poco X2 that captured more accurate colors, although both phones' sensors captured good amounts of detail. Portrait mode works well, and both phones give you the option to adjust the background blur before and after taking a shot. Edge detection is handled well too on both devices. Now, the Poco X2 tends to sharpen the subjects a bit more and also had slightly better exposure than the Redmi Note 8 Pro. The Poco X2 has a dual selfie camera setup, while the Redmi Note 8 Pro has a single selfie camera. Here, the Poco X2 once again has slightly better exposure, and skin tones look more natural when compared to the shots taken with the Redmi Note 8 Pro. Even with portrait mode, it delivered a slightly better background bokeh, although edge detection on both phones was similar. Now, when shooting against the light, it was the Redmi Note 8 Pro that handled HDR better. In low light, both phones struggled to capture good details, but between the two, we found the Poco X2 to produce a slightly brighter image. The Redmi Note 8 Pro improves the exposure of the shots when using night mode, but here the Poco X2 still comes out on top with clearly better details. With the wide-angle cameras, it's the Redmi Note 8 Pro that had slightly better details. When recording video at 4K, the Poco X2 has a clear lead over the Redmi both in terms of quality and stabilization. The Redmi Note 8 Pro lacks stabilization at 4K, so you do end up with some shaky footage. In low light too, the Poco X2 captured much better details with very little noise compared to the Redmi Note 8 Pro. The latter stabilizes video at 1080p, but once again in less than ideal light, video was quite jittery and not as good as the footage captured by the Poco X2. The software seems identical on the surface on both phones as they both run slightly different versions of MIUI. However, the MIUI version of the Poco X2 is based on Android 10, while the Redmi Note 8 Pro is still on Android 9. Now, in terms of software features though, they are both nearly identical. This being MIUI, you can expect a lot of spammy notifications and ads popping up in your notification shade. Now, they are less frequent on the Poco X2, but we still notice some notifications promoting content from the stock apps such as Mi Video. Thankfully, you can disable online promotions and push notifications for this app, which should help keep your notification shade relatively clutter-free. Now, we've already made a video telling you about how to remove ads from MIUI, so be sure to check that out for a definitive look at getting rid of spam from the Poco X2 and the Redmi Note 8 Pro. Now, while the base variant of the Redmi Note 8 Pro is still one of the best phones you can find under 15,000 rupees, the slight premium for the Poco X2 is definitely justified. Now, for this extra bit of money, you do get fewer ads in MIUI, a smoother display, and slightly better cameras, especially for video recording. Now, the Poco X2 is slightly bulkier than the Redmi Note 8 Pro, but honestly, other than this, there's very little else to complain about. So thanks for watching our comparison, and for all things tech, log on to gadgets360.com.